like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for April 11th, 2024.
Eddie, could you let the record show that it's 2024?
Yes.
All right, great.
All right, let's call to order. Roll call, Eddie.
Okay. Marlene Newman,
I don't see Marlene.
Ernesto Castaneda,
Here.
Daniel Schlegel,
Here.
Sam DeSaller,
Here.
Ashley Johnson, John Saunders,
Here.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Here.
William Folk,
Here.
Reynard Cross,
Oh, here we are. Okay.
Duncan Campbell, Kirsten Hawley, Karen Duffy, Jeremy Heckard.
Here.
Hackard, pardon me. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Eddie. Let's move on to approval of minutes from the March 20th, 24 meeting. So I need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All right, your turn, Eddie.
Okay, and who seconded that? I
Sorry,
apologize.
that was me.
Okay.
Daniel.
All right. All right. Ernesto,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Ashley Johnson,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yep.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
William Folk.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, let's move on to COAs, and we have a commission review of COA 24-08, 510 South Hawthorne Drive in Elm Heights. All right, it's up to
All right.
you.
510 South Hawthorne Drive is a contributing, I believe, structure in the Elm Heights Historic District. The petitioner is Stephanie Bean, requesting to replace original concrete tile roof with ceramic tile of the same form and roughly the original color. These are interlocking French tiles. The concrete tile form that was originally used on the roof and is still in place for the most part today. I don't know if you can make it out, but
Recording in progress.
individual tiles have been replaced with ceramic, but by and large, what is somebody?
Technical difficulties, we'll be right back.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see.
John, do you have your muted?
Mine's muted. I double checked.
Speakers on.
Okay.
It sounds like yours, Noah.
Yeah, I think this is coming through the speakers. Okay, great.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Eddie, Karen just got here. Just
Okay.
for the
Oh,
record.
hey, Karen.
I want to make sure you.
Perfect,
Sorry.
thank you.
All right.
Okay. As I was saying, the petitioner is requesting to replace the original concrete tile roof with ceramic Ludovici tiles of the same form and color as the originals, according to the Elm Heights District guidelines for roofs. Petitioners would replace only the deteriorated portion of a historic roof and use substitute materials only if the original material is not technically feasible. If full replacement is necessary, as in this case, replace in kind, matching the original in material, scale, detail, pattern, and design. Because the original variety of interlocking French concrete seafoam green tiles are no longer easily available. Staff recommends approval of COA 2408. Here you can see an original tile which was left on site, as well as some hints of the original tile coloring underneath some of the roof fascia. And we did reach out, or the petitioner Stephanie Bean reached out to the neighborhood construction committee and did not receive a response.
Oh, that's not true.
That's not true? You did?
I did receive a response.
Okay, great. Anything you'd like to add?
They said, woohoo!
All right.
We're super excited. Make sure that the weight is about the same, which it is.
I mean, if the petitioner says it, then I'm gonna assume that's what they said.
All right.
Sorry,
All
I thought they would respond to you.
I would have thought so, but, you know, it's fine. Okay.
Stephanie, do you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, the house was built in 1926. It's 2024, so it was almost a 100-year roof.
Mhm.
We feel so fortunate to be the ones to hit the 100 years. But
Okay.
we're excited. The red little bits that you can see
Mhm.
were, there are a few homes still in town that have these types of roofs. Almost all of them have been replaced with asphalt shingle as far as we've been able to find. Every time they took one of those roofs off, we went and scavenged as many good tiles as we could. Just don't think we can make it anymore. I got appliance trays upstairs in the attic catching the rain right now.
Okay. Thank you so much. So let's do questions. Sam?
So this is a Ludovici tile?
Yes.
Did you, and it's got a picture in the thing of a proposed replacement tile, so that means you have a proposed replacement tile.
That's it, yeah, that's the one from Ludovici there on the
Okay.
left.
You didn't have to bring it with you, did you?
I did not.
Okay, we'll let you live. What is the manufacturer color name?
The color name is, I think it's called Empire Green.
Okay, cool. And this is the glazed smooth terracotta French interlocking tile.
Yes.
Cool. No more questions, thank you. Oh wait, one more question. And once you install it, will it have the same basic exposure?
It's a little bit longer exposure
Mhm.
than the original.
Okay. It's gonna be close, maybe like an inch longer, maybe.
Something like that,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Ashley, any questions?
No questions.
Jeremy? Bill? Elizabeth?
No.
Daniel?
Sam asked the one question I had, so.
Karen?
No question.
Ernesto?
questions.
I don't have any questions. So we'll move over to comments. Sam, comments?
I guess I would reiterate the neighborhood committee woo-hoo. This is actually a great upgrade. This is what I think that material was trying to be, but this is better. And it's gonna have the same profile and it's, gonna last you at least 100 years, not that you're gonna care about that after a certain period.
Thanks, Sam. Ashley?
No comment.
All righty. Jeremy?
I think it looks nice.
Me too. Bill?
Thank you for your patience. I think it's going to look great.
Elizabeth?
Same thing.
Looks nice. Daniel?
I think it's gonna be a great thing.
Well, we're
Sharon?
happy about it.
Ernesto? Hey, we're all good with it. Thank you. Comments from the gallery?
Just going through in mind, you probably thought this would get some extra storage in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so I need a motion.
Move to approve COA 2408.
I second it.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Ernesto Castaneda,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Ashley Johnson.
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yep.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
William Falk.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Awesome. Terrific. Thank you for coming. All right, let's move on to demolition delay.
The joyful part of the evening.
Exactly. So we got DD 24-11.
This is a contributing building not located in any district. Those of you who were here for the March 28th meeting might recognize this. The petitioner has since received a construction permit and a yard sign. So the start date for the demo delay was the 1st of this month when those were received. The building is a 1934 square located on the 500 block of North Lincoln Street. It's rated contributing in the local historic sites and structures survey. For some reason, it does not appear in the Indiana sites and structures survey. I don't see any reason for that besides maybe it was overlooked. Several of the other remaining residential buildings on this block were built out in the late 1800s, so several decades earlier. But other examples of this style can be found all over Bloomington, including in the neighborhood several blocks to the north. And staff recommends release of demo delay 2411.
All right, thank you. Is the petitioner with us by any chance?
Yes.
All right, do you have any additional comments for us?
No.
Okay,
So?
all right, thank you. Sam?
Let's see. Are you familiar with BRI? If you have any reasonable materials in this building, they will often come through and take stuff to get reused. That'll save you some landfill costs, and it'll save the landfill some landfill. So I would recommend looking into that. I guess the other question is, had you looked into building up the site and leaving the building itself to try and increase the density?
No, that wasn't the current plan.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Ashley?
No questions.
Jeremy? No. Bill? Elizabeth?
No.
Daniel?
I had a question for Noah. Were you, in your research on this, were you able to find anything about the families or who would have lived in this house from the 30s on for the last 90-so-ish years?
That doesn't that doesn't show up in the packet, does it?
Sometimes before, like, Gloria would research, so if it had been people that of notable local interest or anything had lived or stayed there, or, you know, it was their childhood home, things like that. So I'm not saying this one is, but if that was like Hoagie Carmichael's home as a child or something, that's going to carry a lot different weight than this is just a regular house across the board.
For demolitions like this, I've been doing at least sort of a cursory search of city directories and census data when I can get access to it. So my search on this house has admittedly been kind of superficial, but through that I didn't notice anything specific.
Okay, I just thought I'd check. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Daniel? Karen?
No
Ernesto?
questions.
Okay, I haven't got any questions about this one. Does the Chris or anybody okay. So I believe we need a motion to go ahead and move forward, and I've got the sheet here. Would you like it, Sam? All right.
I have one comment.
Yes, Barry?
Just one comment. The owner has reached out to BRI already, to let them know that this house could be demolished and, to see if there's any interest in any level. Yeah, so I was wondering.
Jesse, you've been in the property. Is the trim still there? Is it still? So that's the things that BRI could get.
Yeah, it's pretty well intact.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you very much. All right, Sam, you've got the form.
All right. Today, regarding the property at 526 North Lincoln Street, the Historic Preservation Commission declares that it got notice of the proposed demolition, and after today's discussion sees no need to review the plans any further and waives the rest of the demolition delay waiting period. The HPC may later recommend the property for historic district designation to the Common Council.
Great, thanks. We need a second.
I'll second.
Ashley,
Yep.
second. Very good. And we need a roll.
Okay. Ernesto Castaneda,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
I didn't have to say no, I don't understand why it's being torn
Down.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Ashley Johnson,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
No.
William Falk.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Let's move on to demolition delay 24-12.
This is one that I wish I had Duncan here for because it involves a barn. This is located on the lot at 1504 West 17th Street, which has 3 contributing structures, including this barn, a shed that is probably contemporaneous with the barn and the house, and a house that, according to information provided by the county, was built in 1930. The barn is located near the rear of the lot, and while it's surveyed on the Indiana Historic Sites and Structures Inventory, for one reason or another, it does not appear in the Monroe County property record for the lot. The barn is heavily deteriorated, and according to the petitioner, who has had people have a look at the structure, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to restore from this state. And for some additional context, here's the gable end of the barn and the house, which is also contributing and contemporaneous with the barn, as seen from 17th Street. The barn would be behind the house in this image. It's sort of a narrow, long lot.
Thank you, Noah. Is the petitioner with us? Do you have any additional comments for us?
Just further explanation, in 2019, I had consulted with 3 or 4 different contractors to see if the barn could be salvaged. That was before it had reached the condition that it was in, and at that point, we were told after thorough examination that no, it would be too unsafe to try to restore it, and I was always given the evaluation that you'll just have to have it demolished and hauled away. So that's about 5 years ago at this point. Once COVID hit, it just sort of let it ride, but it's we're ready to have it demolished and hauled away and put something else on the lot too.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So Sam?
I guess the only question I have, is this actually visible from the public right away?
Yeah, that was my question.
I don't believe so.
I didn't understand the question.
Is it visible from the street or public right of way?
No, it's not really.
Then, yeah,
Up for driveway.
then does that actually, this is legal, and does that actually fall under our purview?
Yeah, the street view does fall into as a consideration.
Right,
And
Like what you-
but it's not visible from the street, is what I just heard.
Right.
Yeah, so,
But it would be a full demolition.
Yeah, so, but is your question, is street view something you can consider? Or, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
My understanding of what we have purview over is that the structure has to be visible from a public right of way to fall under the jurisdiction of the HPC. Is that actual? Or am I?
Yeah,
that's
you know,
what I thought it was.
let me double check that. I think you
Oh,
are
Gabe.
right, because, go ahead, Noah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, yes.
So there may be more relevant detail in the parts of code that have to do with HPC or state law, I don't know. But in terms of, so I'm Gabriel Holbrow, I'm from the Planning and Transportation Department. I'm here to offer any questions you have. So for Title 20 of Municipal Code, which is the Unified Development Ordinance, there's the section on demolition delay, which is one of the reasons it's here. In that, there's the applicability has to do with whether the structure is listed as contributing. It does not have anything to do with whether it's visible from the right of way. So theoretically, you could have a house that was like off a driveway over a hill. You can't see it from the street. Demolition delay under Title 20 would definitely still apply.
Okay, and that is for full demolition or for future reference, or partial demolition or?
To get in the weeds, if we're talking about the actually listed principal structure, contributing means that full demolition triggers demolition delay.
But
If it's outstanding, or is there another category?
Notable.
If it's notable or outstanding, partial demolition also triggers demolition.
Okay,
In this case, this is not the principal structure. The barn itself is not listed by name itself in the survey, but the house is, and the house and the barn are of the same era. And under Title 20, the UDO, demolition delay applies to accessory structures that are the same general era of construction.
gotcha. So this one's a little bit slippery, but yeah. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. That's all I got.
Is there, yeah, okay, Ashley? Okay, Jeremy?
No questions.
Nope. Daniel?
I guess my question, how,
I'd like to say something.
But yes, yes.
I can't see how they are of the same era unless you're taking a whole decade or something. But it's like poured concrete base with a rounded top, which the sill plate did not even stay on. It's off the sill plate. And it's poured right on the ground. It's not even in the ground.
Right.
So it always was incredibly obvious to us that there was no way, we could solve it, save it. And the initial letter from the Preservation Committee or whatever mentioned only the house and portions of the house which have mortarless limestone blocks this big.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Kevin, I believe, was it earlier today or yesterday you had mentioned a letter that you received, which I'm sure is the one you're referring to?
Right, yeah, that's what Rosemary is referring to. Right, yeah, we don't have possession of that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ernesto?
I don't have questions, but you can.
I'm sorry, Daniel?
how long have you folks been living there?
We lived there kind of like half-time.
We've been there since we purchased it in the very early 2000s, like 2002, from Rosemary's adopted parents, Richard Raper and Laura Alice Raper. Rosemary's been there since the 1970s.
Oh, wow. And when you purchased it, how was the condition of the barn then? Was it about like it is now, or was it a
No, it
lot
was,
better?
it was in better shape, and it hasn't been used in all that time, but it's just gradually the roof has been giving way. I had tried repairing it earlier on in the 1990s, but it became more than I can do, and so that's when I sought out professional contractors, and it just became more than anybody could or would want to handle it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The barn is actually like a third of the way up the depth of the property.
Okay.
So it's, you'd have to drive all the way up our drive past the house in order to see it. But
Gotcha.
it's, it had double, when we got it from my folks, it was a double roof. And that was the only thing we noticed, was that we keep finding shingles around. We had it pretty much right away boarded up because Ann had suggested that we do that.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you again. Okay. I haven't got any questions, Ernesto.
No, I do not.
Okay, so we need a motion for DD 24-12. Oh, it's demolition delay, but absolutely.
Okay, never mind.
I mean, questions and
Sorry.
comments kind of roll into the same.
Did you
under
just think
demolition
the
delay.
demo delay because it's a full?
John, on that then, I just had a question since Renard's not here. I feel like he's the one that normally picks up this torch, but I know mentioned in the past about, if people bought it this year and this was the condition versus having it for a while is,
You mean demolition by the.
yeah. So I know that's been a point in the past, and Renard and I had talked about it and kind of opened my eyes up to it. And I know these things are not cheap.
No.
By any means, but I know Renard, I keep throwing him under there, but I fully agree. But, but if we kind of just let people have stuff and it just goes by the wayside, I mean, I could buy a property and let it sit for the next 20 years, then be like, hey, we got to tear this down. It's in terrible shape. So I'm not saying this is a prime example or a textbook example, but I do know that we're going to see more and more of these unless we start to get some teeth or whatever ability we have to really lock into these and make sure people know they need to take care of these or.
Right. Well, I agree with
There's
you, Daniel,
consequences.
on all these points. However, I think with this particular case and this particular property, because it sits so far back up the road, you can't see it.
Right.
And so it's a secondary property or secondary building then it's not be able to see. But Anna or Margie, do you have anything to contribute to that about?
I just want to address Sam's question. So the reference that you're thinking about, Sam, is in 8.08020 Certificate of Appropriateness, and
So it's only the COA is not the.
Yeah,
Okay,
right,
thank
and
you, that's clarifying.
it's one of the factors or the purposes of you look at the position of the building or structure in relation to the street, public right of way and other buildings or structures. So the things that you look at in terms of generally criteria for the commission to consider in the case of a proposed demolition include, there are 4 things: the effect of the demolition on the character of a historic district, state of deterioration, disrepair, and structural stability of the structure. The condition of the building resulting from neglect shall not be considered grounds for demolition. Balance of the public interest in preserving the structure or the integrity of the district with the interest of the owner of the building or structure in the use and utilization of the property, and possible alternatives to demolition. So those are the factors.
All right, thanks, Margie. Anna, anything, or we're good? Okay.
And my understanding is also the only other option that the HPC has is for designation, right? Okay, and this is just for the barn if I read this, right? Okay.
And my point was like this, I understand this property.
Right.
I'm just saying for others, especially with
So,
3 new members and Noah
Daniel,
being new.
What we need to
I just
do.
want to emphasize
No, I'm
that.
glad you did. And I think what the commission needs to look at, maybe at our next retreat or whenever we get together again, is trying to put together something in our documentation addressing that part was delayed, where they, delayed doing any kind of work, and we've seen that, as you said, multiple times. We don't have any way to stop it yet.
And in some, if it is within a district, then that could be a potential violation. But yeah, when it comes to structures that are ranked contributing and aren't in a historic district, I think that's where we need to have a clearer policy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments, Chris? Anybody back?
Pretty much time to go for this barn.
All right, thanks, Chris. Okay, Sam.
Today, regarding the contributing outbuilding at 1504 West 17th Street, the Historic Preservation Commission declares that it got notice to the proposed demolition, and after today's discussion, sees no need to review the plans any further and waives the rest of the demolition delay waiting period. The HPC may later recommend the property for historic designation to the Common Council.
Second. Okay. Eddie?
All right. Ernesto Castaneda,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Ashley Johnson,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
William Folk.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for coming in this evening.
All right.
Really appreciate the additional information about it.
Yeah,
It's very
thank
cool.
you. Just to be clear, then, are we clear to schedule demolition now?
You are.
Well,
Well,
there's some paperwork process, so I'm Gabriel
Right.
Holbrow, we spoke on the phone.
Paperwork.
I'm right now sending over our release to the building department, then they may need to do something, and then you can pick up your demo permit from the county.
All right, from the county.
Yeah, so it might, depending on how quick I am, and they are, maybe it has to be Monday, but maybe we'll be able to get it tomorrow.
All right, very good.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in this evening. All right. So let's move to new business. And we have the World Courier BEA presentation.
Right. Okay. So for those of you who may not recognize this, this is 109 West 4th Street, or it was the current site of Best Taste restaurant next to the parking garage on 4th Street. Prior to a fire that destroyed a lot of the building's original materials, the World Courier building was a newspaper printing shop built in the German Renaissance revival style by Bloomington architect John L. Nichols, who built a handful of other significant buildings that still stand around Bloomington today. Because this building was run through with a fire or two and has been substantially altered, it is not listed in the Indiana Historic Sites and Structures Inventory, and is also not eligible for a historic preservation tax credit because in its current state, it is not eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. However, Bloomington has this other program called the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association Historic Facade Grant Program that could potentially provide some additional funding to help restore historic buildings downtown. And, you know, while it still is expected to meet with approval of historic preservation staff and the commission, it doesn't follow exactly the same guidelines as some of the federal tax credit or grant programs. The applicant, something that is a little unusual in this case is ordinarily when somebody applies for one of these grants, they also have to apply for a COA from the commission because they're going to be making alterations for a building that is currently listed or considered eligible. In this case, the applicant would be substantially restoring a building that is not currently eligible and would like to present to the commission why they believe that this building could be eligible and it's worth restoring and preserving the site. To that end, Justin Fox, the owner of the property, has invited local historian William Coulter to make a presentation to the board about the history of this site, and the architect John Nichols, and open himself up to comment from the commission.
Terrific. All right, Mr. Coulter?
And I've got the presentation here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have what here?
I have the presentation you sent me if
Okay.
you'd like me to run through.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is not sharing.
So I first saw that photograph on the top there in my 20s, and I was really impressed by that. It's interesting you call it German Renaissance style. It really struck me as like a building that, you know, one of the society architects would come back from Europe with a sketch of. It's a really well articulated design, interesting mix of materials, stucco over the stone facade, corbelling, stepped wall, parapet wall, tiles, the gable with the ribbon windows, the little molding there between the first story and the second story. It's really one of Nichols' better designs in advance. I think it's a Nichols design because of these two construction notices, one from September and one from October of 1911. It's kind of odd. Oscar Cravens, the publisher, decided to, supervise construction himself, which was kind of common back then. So I'm assuming that Nichols' role in the project was as designing the plans. November 16th, 1911, the World Courier is in the building, and the building is complete. You can go ahead and advance. Here's the Sanborn map from 1913, showing some construction details. The front facade is blue, which is stone, and then has a notation stucco on the second floor. Brick building as an indication for the parapet walls on the north and on the east and west side. And here's a photo from 1914. This was from the Evening World. It's the circulation department, and it's got a real tight view on the arch, which in my mind is what really makes that design pop. You don't get a lot of arches in Bloomington architecture, some on campus, very few at this scale. You can advance. Here's a little sketch, bio sketch for John Nichols, born in 1859. His father was H.J. Jack Nichols, contractor and architect. John had a brother 6 years younger named Morton, half-brother. John ran a store for a while selling millwork and architectural details, but mostly he was a builder architect. In the 70s, they used to call him Bloomington's first architect, but I don't really see how that can be. His father was advertising as an architect in 1876 when John was an adolescent. About 1885, Nichols went west. He worked at F.E. Edbrook in Denver for 7 years, doing construction supervision and HVAC. About 10 years later, he came back home, and over the years, he was involved in 3 firms, you could say. J.L. Nichols Architect. He had a partnership with his son, Bridge, who was named Bridge because he and his mother, his father and his mother were married on a bridge. That's why he was named Bridge. And then Nichols and Nichols was a partnership with Morton Nichols, who also married his wife on a bridge. Nichols died in 1929. Go on. So H.J. Nichols' big claim is probably that he built the Owen Hall and Wiley Hall. He was the contractor and not the architect. And I'm assuming that Mort and John were both working for him at that time. You can advance it. And so there's the Wiley Hall in 1910. Here's an ad from Inland Architect and News Record in April 1885, so we know John was still in Bloomington at that point. And we know he left later in 1885 because the Bloomington reports of construction activity stopped in August when he left town. There was a fire in 1900, Wiley burned. And at the time, Nichols was in Indianapolis. He spent about 6 months in an office in the Lemke building, came back down and was associate architect on Wiley Hall. Nichols never really was that top tier type of architect who would get a big building at IU. Nichols is pictured on the left here. His son Bridge is on the right. Never found any pictures for H.J. or Morton. And there's a sketch for the Harris Grand Theater, which was built in 1907. It's the only sketch I could find for anything that Nichols actually built. It's sort of workmanlike. And it may not even be by any of the Nichols family. They hired a architectural draftsman about a year before Harris Grand opened. If you're familiar with Nichols' work, whether you know it or not, he's got stuff all over town. This is on the north side of the square. Little retail building built for the Buskirk Hill family in 1898. On the east side of the square, the fraternity building, Knights of Pythias and Redmen, 1904. On the south side of the square, First National Bank building, 1907. And then on the west side, the Eagle Clothing Store was remodeled with a new facade in 1929. It was actually, the construction was actually performed after Nichols died, but he drew the plans before his death. And then some others, Princess Theater, North Walnut. On IU, he had a couple of lesser structures that he did actually design. IU's observatory. This is the Myers residence on North Washington Street. Showers Inn on North Washington Street. Kirkwood Manor on Kirkwood. And then a duplex for TJ Sayre. And then the Book Nook on Indiana Avenue. And this bungalow is one of my favorites, very green and green, on North College Avenue, 1909.
Don't look at this slide.
This is from microfilm, so that's why it's so streaky. But this is the Allen County Courthouse in Indiana. It's a drawing by an architect named Tolan who designed the building. And it came out of the Construction News periodical in 1897. And on the next slide, you will see that our architect was a big plagiarist and proposed building something similar in Monroe County in 1908. Oscar Cravens was the publisher and postmaster. He's the guy who built the building we're talking about. His competitor was Walter Bradfoot, I misspelled that, on the Bloomington Telephone, publisher. Both were at times postmasters in Bloomington. Postmaster was a patronage job, in effect, at this time. You can go on. Here's Walter Bradfoot's building. This is also a Nichols project, but it's demolished. It was where the Chase Bank is now on the southwest corner of the square.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You can go on. And here we have Walter and Oscar side by side in front of the College Avenue entrance to the post office. If it looks like they're a little uncomfortable, they are. Because they would frequently address each other by name in their newspaper in unflattering ways. Walter was a slash and burn kind of guy. Edwin Fullwider, the artist, wrote a memoir. He was a paper boy for the World, and he really liked Oscar. Paper boys for the Telephone lived in fear of him. You can go on. Oscar was a little more subtle in his attacks. You can probably see that he calls him Walter $ Bradford, which is a reference to Walter's anti-tax philosophy, I think. He would write scathing parodies of the celebration for the new city hall. He attacked the police for buying an automobile because they had always walked and they didn't need a car. And he led a remonstrance against paving Kirkwood Avenue because who needs paving? So, any questions?
Yes, Sam.
So what are we being asked for here?
So The petitioner would like to get comments from the commission since there's no COA required, but they'd like to try and faithfully restore one or two of the historic facades.
So they are going to apply for an historic facade grant from the Urban Enterprise Association?
Right.
And we have no purview over how those funds are used. That's those guys, right?
That's those guys. I will have to, when they submit their application to the BUEA, I'll have to write a staff report.
Mm-hmm.
And so any comments from the commission are going to be included in that.
Okay. So I'm just looking at the historic facade grant guidelines, and the eligibility says all commercial, industrial, or residential investment properties on the local historic survey, which this one is not, and properties determined to be historic by city staff within the BU, the Urban Enterprise Zone. Has staff determined yet whether or not this property is historic as is?
So going off of the guidelines for the National Park Service guidelines for reconstruction and restoration, I believe that we have enough. I believe that we may have enough physical and documentary evidence remaining to faithfully reconstruct one or two facades according to National Park Service standards. And I think that the site's historic significance has been demonstrated, at least for, not its existing, architectural form as is, but for its, the history of, the significance of the paper that was printed there and its relationship to other sites around town.
Okay.
So it is an unusual case, and that's why I'm making that staff determination.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Ashley,
I'm assuming the front would be one of the facades that would be restored. Is there another, which
That's what I was.
which size of the building are we
So
talking about?
the other side you can see that has the sort of iconic parapet and the sign. I believe the applicant is proposing applying for a facade grant to reconstruct that side on the opposite eastern facade, which is in a public right-of-way by the alley that leads to the back door and blockhouse.
Because that's currently covered up, right?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only question.
okay, Jeremy.
I think my comment would be in trying to establish the significance of the paper more is maybe digging in a little bit more on its position within the town, how long it ran, those sort of things to be able to say, this was an important building that also had an important newspaper that did X, Y, and Z. I think it's interesting that there's like a little battle between publishers, but I'd be much more interested in what that newspaper actually stood for and that sort of stuff.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Bill?
Is that a question or comment?
We're both.
Both?
I mean, we're just making comments for the forward. We're not
Gotcha.
putting anything under.
So, yeah, just based on the presentation and the stature of a newspaper in any given city, the historical significance is pretty daggone high at the end of the day. So I applaud the owners of this building for, I applaud you. I'll look right at you. I applaud you for wanting to do this to the property.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think this would be a huge improvement to the structure as well as something pretty cool and interesting to happen in the city of Bloomington.
Thank you, Bill. Elizabeth?
I concur with him. I'd like to see that done. And especially that arch.
Yeah, I love it. That's why I bought the building, the picture.
Yeah, yeah, love it.
Daniel?
Was having both a blessing and a curse as the director at the History Center. I think this is phenomenal. We just wrapped up a 6-month exhibit about newspapers. So if you didn't stop in to see that, we had our entire edition was full about all the newspapers, everything you were asking and more, well more than I'm sure you can cram into the presentation, everything you asked and then some. So having something like this to really kind of give some character, restore it, add some historical flair to it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I'm in favor. So I think this could be a real asset to our community. So thank you for coming to us and having this, wanting to do this. That's great to hear.
Karen?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's fantastic for the historic significance, I think, is solid. And of course, the older form, I guess I still have questions about what it's going to be like. Is it going to come up high like that?
It is. We're going to do it to scale.
Wow. And there's
You
no,
can see the gable has been completely butchered. That'll be all framed up and look like it did before. Clay tile roof. The stones actually need carving this week.
because the architectural significance here too is, is just beautiful. There's no problem, I guess this is for Noah or Margie, with this program, this facade grant. There's nothing to say the facade has to be the street-facing facade? Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
Thanks, Karen. Ernesto?
Yes, just quick questions about the restoration. You're planning to bring it back very close to what it was?
Everything except the two windows, because the building code, those windows on either side of the arch become doors.
Right.
So that's really the only change.
Do you have any plans for what is going to happen to future business or?
The restaurant, I bought the building about 6 months ago because of the picture. And they had signed a 5-year lease, so the restaurant plans to stay. They're going to go to China for June and July when I have the masons that are doing the work.
That's amazing.
And then there's 3 or 4 apartments up top, 3 in an Airbnb. So I'm not asking for any extra density, anything. I just want to make the building great.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Thank you.
Jessica, I think I may have seen some of your other projects around town.
Yeah.
This isn't your first. Didn't you do the one at Hillside in Washington?
The Coke machine building.
Yes.
Yeah. Nancy helped me on that. Nancy actually I've talked to in this project too.
Oh, very good. I was I was in your property before and after.
Sure.
And you guys did a marvelous job with that back then. So I think what you're going to do here will turn out to be spectacular when you're finished with it. That's my feeling on it. Any other, Sam?
I only had comments, and this is going to be kind of a downer after all the upper comments. So my apologies. I mean, I think, Nichols was one of the most interesting architects in Bloomington, and that was a great building. And you do really great projects. I'm a big fan of a lot of the buildings you've done around town. You're raising the bar on the level of construction in Bloomington a lot higher than many of the other developers that come, say, out of Indy that we see come before this board a lot. I think the thing that I depart from the other comments we've heard is it feels much more like a reconstruction rather than a restoration. And that gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's totally rebuilding a building. It's the right site. But it's been changed so much. It's no longer the building it was, and it's of a density at a time when all the buildings downtown were that same density, and this is right downtown. So, putting on my urbanist hat here for a moment, I'd love to see this be a mixed-use building, and you put an exhibit about the newspaper there. I mean, if you want to, but that's just my take on it. But as a preservationist, this is less of a preservation project to me than it is a reinterpretation, a cultural reinterpretation of the building site. It'll be a lot better than what's there, but is it the highest and best use of that property? Probably not, but you got the building, you got the money, a lot of people like it, so do what you will.
I guess to that point, part of my rationale for recommending this is that conventionally speaking, as far as I can think, there really aren't any sort of grant or tax credit programs available federally or through the state for reconstruction work, whether it's to the Secretary of Interior standards or not. So I think if this is something that genuinely has a community interest, especially from this commission or other people who have an interest in Bloomington preservation, then this is the best shot that we have to make a statement on the site.
And to your point as well, Sam, I also am thinking like future preservation, so another 100 years from now and looking at this. My thought is in 5 years, someone else could buy this building as it currently is, and it would run straight through this commission for a demolition. Like as it currently sits, it would just, even though more or less there, and with something like this, I think it really strengthens it so that in 100 years, someone else can say, hey, on this site, this is the building, it was altered 100 years ago, but you know, this is how it's supposed to look, this is what it is. So in the newspapers, yeah. So, but I think long-term preservation, it'll protect the site and what's left of the building, and then reconstruct what used to be there. So, I think it's great. I think it's going to be a good project.
I just thought of another question. Will, if this went through, would it come back to us?
Not in this case.
No. Okay.
I could, the BUEA is, I can just tell you a little bit about it. It's set up by state law, but their aim is to provide the means to improve the economic, physical, and social environment for the zone, residents and businesses. So this project, to me, is just the lawyer, but it does seem to fit in that definition nicely, that it is going to improve the economic, the physical, and the social environment by adding, even if it's not the original building, something that looks just like it. And it'll be interesting, you know, for this downtown zone to have this unique building.
Thank you, Margie.
Seems appropriate.
All right. Do we have any more comments? Christopher?
Yeah. Nancy Heaston, this was Nancy Heaston's idea when the question was asked, how can we get some kind of help when we do restorations in the downtown? And this was a really clever idea to get some funding, you know, behind our designation of the downtown. And I've done a little informal consulting with this building, and I've measured the remaining facade coins on the side of the building where they turn into the brick to get scale of what kind of stone is going on there. And you know, some of them are 13 inches, 11 inches, 5 inches, and the pictures show that it, you know, it was really a formal, I mean, a robust kind of stone with a lot of dimension to it. And what I've found talking to the owner is just how much he cares to make this as close to the original version as possible. And you know, I'm pretty thrilled about it. And I've restored houses, and sometimes people say how much of the house has to be left. Sometimes I say the idea of the house has to be there. And clearly the idea of this building is here. And I think it'll be an amazing restoration project. I won't be involved in it beyond just talking to the owner about how he can best replicate what was from these photos that he's found of the historic building.
Thank you, Chris.
I'd like to thank Noah, Chris, Nancy, and especially Bill for the presentation. You guys have been great to work with. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any more comments for him? All right, thank you very much. I hope this helps you guys out moving forward with the project. And again, thank you, Justin.
So do they need a recommendation from the commission?
Would that be
Positive
appropriate?
recommendation,
I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now why don't you put together a letter for us and recommendation, and we'll take care of it. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go on to old business.
Right.
And we're gonna do 615 North Lincoln. And that will be up to Noah with the presentation. Is the one with the lovely.
So this is something where I've printed off some additional copies of the staff report as well as the draft ordinance. So on January 25th, 2024, the commission voted to nominate the house this was as part of a demolition delay, to nominate the house at 615 North Lincoln Street as a local historic district. The building is listed as contributing on both state and local surveys and would be a contributing resource in what's currently the Cottage Grove study area. This is an area that was identified in the 1970s, shortly before Bloomington's formal preservation program got going, as a potential district. In that time, there have been, as the name of the research study area suggests, there have been studies on making it into a district, but I don't believe those have received enough neighborhood support to go forward past the planning stages. In this case, while it is the prerogative of the commission to designate buildings that are up for demolition delay as local historic districts, and this is something that the commission has successfully nominated buildings for in the past, and they have been uplifted to local historic districts. Staff does not believe that this individual property on its own warrants designation, although it's an integral part of the study area and retains a lot of its original integrity, including some features like the limestone sidewalk and retaining wall that would definitely be topics of consideration if there was going to be future work at the site or a demolition. The staff does not recommend sending this nomination to Common Council.
Thank you, Noah. I don't believe the homeowner here with that property, 615 North Lincoln, no?
He's based out of Chicago.
All right, well, it's not,
Right.
they don't have to be here for demolition delay. So I guess, what's that?
Are they
Oh,
I don't see him.
no, I don't see him.
I see Richard Lewis.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. So Sam, do we have any questions of Noah?
I guess the only question to clarify would be, is the demolition for just the structure? Or is it the entire site?
Going back to the January meeting, I remember this was a question that we had. My understanding was, and I hope I'm not wrong in this, that it was just for the structure.
You mean in addition to the garage or?
Well, in addition to the garage, but not including the sidewalk and retaining wall.
I don't know that it was ever clarified whether the wall was included or not.
Yeah, part of the issue was, I remember this was something that the owner brought up, that they didn't have plans to demolish the wall, but they didn't know whether that was going to happen either by design or incidentally if they're going to demolish the house.
Okay.
And Gabriel is no longer with us, but this does also raise zoning issues since property owners are generally responsible for adjacent retaining wall and sidewalks.
So if we do not vote to send this to Common Council,
Mhm.
then we also have to address the demolition delay, right?
Right.
Okay. And when we address the demolition delay, if we do not,
sorry.
if we don't decide to send this to council, then we can clarify what the demolition delay is for it if they want to come back and
Right.
hit us again.
I think that would be important because through however long this is going, the past few months, we haven't established whether or not, what kind of impact this is going to have on the sidewalk or retaining wall.
Gotcha. Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
And Gabriel, that was actually the question that we had. That you were just out for a second. Something about planning came up, but the petitioner, who was hoping to demolish this building, if we recall correctly from the January meeting, he was not sure whether the planned demolition of this building and the garage would mean taking down the retaining wall as well, or what kind of impact that might have on the sidewalk. So part of our question was, we were hoping to, I can't speak for us. What we're considering now is releasing the demo delay, but maybe mentioning to the property owner that this doesn't necessarily cover the retaining wall on the sidewalk.
So, I'm just repeating what you said, but make sure I understand, that you're releasing
We're not even
demolition of,
right.
sorry. There was an idea of possibly releasing the demo delay for the house.
Right. Which is what the applicant had applied for. And,
But the retaining wall or the sidewalk, if they wanted to demolish that, would be another process.
Right,
Would
right.
demo delay again. So, okay, so that's what you said.
That's
What's the question that I can answer?
that's basically it. I mean, like, if you repeating that back to us sounds reasonable.
We're separating out the structure
Right.
from the thing.
Retaining wall and
What we're going
sidewalk.
to, if we don't want them to deal with.
Let me, well, yeah, if you can do that, I would defer to Margie over here.
Yeah.
Can you do
But,
conditional release?
Can you do a conditional release that just says,
Mhm.
we release the house, but.
For demolition.
repairs?
We just did that with the barn.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't see why you can't. I guess I want to ask the members, has that happened before? Have you ever done that before in your history?
I don't believe we
Earlier in this meeting, we did.
Well, I mean,
Well,
with,
I
the, with
mean-
the barn, yes.
Yeah.
But this is,
What may be possibly relevant, I'm looking up right now what the demolition permit application said exactly. And that might give some guidance.
That'd be great.
okay, very good.
If it was just gonna be the sidewalk, they'd have to get a permit, COA for the sidewalk itself.
Right. So I guess the question is mostly about the wall.
Well, the question now becomes, what is that, what is it that they applied for?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have their
So I'll just
application?
share the PowerPoint.
Sorry, I'm having trouble finding it.
Yeah, I'll see if I can look back to the
Application.
initial application. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You'll wanna look back to the December meeting.
Right. Oh, that's right. This was
because it
delayed
got
from December.
continued multiple times.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And I'm trying to find it as well.
Mm-hmm. DD 23 615 West First. Hmm.
Is it possible you'd have to designate the wall itself to say that seems undoable?
Mm-hmm.
There is the Pioneer sidewalk, and there's
Mm-hmm.
protected other Depression era sidewalks around
I know
town.
about protecting individual sidewalks, but the wall
I think
might be a completely different story.
Hear that?
Hmm.
Yeah, designating a wall doesn't,
That isn't gonna fly.
no.
Mm-hmm.
It also doesn't make sense for them to tear it down, because then they're like, what are you gonna do to fix, to hang
Right.
another
Something's
wall next
gonna
to it?
retain the dirt.
But
Not ours.
project, it's probably in the way of a project to that wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could imagine there could be a lot of incidental damage, even if they just have, like earth moving or demolition equipment in there.
Is 615 the only address associated with this? I'm having trouble finding it.
Okay.
It is, and actually, it looks like it was, tabled in the October meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see in the minutes for this meeting, it says more discussion ensued. I don't see anything specific mentioned from the minutes for December about the sidewalk. So the sidewalk or the retaining wall. So I'm gonna check
Here's the application.
January. Awesome. Okay. Okay, contributing demolition. All right, the address of the property is written, but I don't see anything more specified. I'll go ahead and check the minutes for January.
Is that
It'd be like October.
is that application like an internal one? Because I'm not finding any record of a application to the
This
building
is-
department.
It came October 10th.
Is it, but is it a Monroe County Building Department thing or?
No.
The City of Bloomington Planning.
It's just our form? Okay, okay. So whatever that says, does it say what they're demolishing?
It just gives the address.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Demolishing.
not a lot of guidance.
Sure. Yeah, I'm checking another meeting packet to see if it's in the minutes.
I have,
Okay, here's something. So from the minutes for January 25th, John Saunders asked if the retaining wall would be preserved. Eric Roylick with City Planning and Engineering stated that he did not know what the plans for the retaining wall were. Elizabeth Mitchell asked if the retaining wall was continuous. Duncan Campbell asked if the petitioner gave a reason for the demolition. More discussion ensued. More discussion ensued about the retaining wall and its structure in relation to the neighborhood. Marlene Newman commented that it would be nice to see a site plan, which we can all agree with.
There's an email that indicates that the owner did not know what he's doing.
Yes.
It was going to be a partial or full demo yet. I'm pretty sure full. Gloria had recommended that he apply for the full. Then if he doesn't, then he doesn't have to come back for a year if he decides to only do a partial. The application for demolition delay was submitted. The yard sign went out on October 12th.
But did they confirm if it was gonna be a full or partial?
They never did.
So can we
it sounds like
consider that
our-
if we don't know it?
Our office recommended, the previous historic preservation has recommended to apply for a full, even though he doesn't know what he's doing.
I would advise that the record does not clearly include the retaining wall on the sidewalk. And then what options that leaves you, that's not my department.
so let me, and I don't know if this is helpful or not, but when I'm reading from our code, it talks about certificates of appropriateness. And when it talks about, areas, looking at the areas of historic district, one of the factors it talks about is a conspicuous change in the exterior appearance of any historic building or any part of or any appurtenance to such a building, including walls, fences, light fixtures, steps, paving, signs by addition, reconstruction. So, again, within a primary area of a historic district, a change in walls and fences or the construction of walls and fences along public ways. So, there seems to be some interest in,
But this is not a historic district.
I know, but
Right.
I'm just thinking about sort of just zooming out, sort of big
Mhm.
picture. It's not inappropriate for you guys to be thinking about
Right, exactly.
this, and so I'm leaning towards if you guys wanna.
So we can make
Conditional.
it a conditional demolition.
Yeah.
Trying to ask such long questions.
Right.
I was hoping to get home by 7 tonight, Sam.
I know why so many people showed up. It's because I printed off a short agenda.
So, would that be acceptable to our group if we allow them to go ahead and do demolition, because we're gonna be coming, you'd have to go to city council with it, which probably wouldn't fly very well at this point. But maybe we can put a condition that if they do delay, if we do demolition, then they have to ensure that this wall and sidewalk will be protected.
And is there
Or-
anything if they don't? I mean, if they trample all over it, is there any way to come back on that and, charge them or impose heavy fines? Does anything stop them from just tearing it up or damaging it?
I hesitate to lean on planning for this, but I'm not sure if, the destruction of a retaining wall or a sidewalk by the adjacent property owner would raise any red flags for you.
The destruction of the retaining wall. Don't hold me to this, but my understanding is it would not need a building permit. We would not review it. We would not need to issue a certificate of zoning compliance for it. However, if the retaining wall is in the right of way, which I don't know if it is, but a retaining wall like this typically would be in the right of way. They would need a right of way use permit from engineering.
But if they damaged it, if we passed it as suggested with the provision and the folks tearing up the
Not
building
intentionally.
and they just, if they were like, well, there's nothing they can do and they damaged it, do we have any teeth? Do we have anything to come back?
Yeah.
Or do they just damage it and say, oh, well, oops?
You can always, the code allows for us to ask for, faithful restoration replacement of a feature. So I guess, we could always, depending upon how quickly, we'll know when they're going out to start the work or not. Will we be able to monitor? I don't know.
Thinking about that two different ways. One way is if it's public right of way, then the city is the owner. It's not exactly the HPC, but the city can say, hey, you messed my stuff, fix it.
Board of Public Works.
Well, yeah, Board of Public Works, exactly. And also, that could be considered partial demolition without demolition delay. No, I guess it doesn't work that way. Never mind.
Actually, did you have something?
So it looks like this retaining wall and some decorative concrete or decorative block sidewalk runs throughout this area. So, and again, I'm new, I'm sorry. This area is a historic district or is not?
It's not.
Is there any way we can, as a preservation committee, work to protect that specific type of design in that area? We can, obviously right now is not the time to do it, but it looks like there's quite a few spot areas where the retaining walls are and even the decorative sidewalk, so.
There's a few ways to do that, and I'm having a couple of conversations right now which are going somewhere, but they've just gotten started and it's very slow about some of these topics. One of which would be trying again to get community support to nominate the study area as a local district. If that happens, there would be guidelines written up for walls and sidewalks. Another thing is the Department of Public Works has a meeting group that discusses issues related to sidewalks. And again, I've been sort of casually invited to attend that. And I'd like to discuss, obviously, preservation as a consideration for retaining and improving sidewalks. This is something that's come before the commission before. There have been a few cases in the past few years in which we've reached pretty satisfactory compromises for retaining parts of historic sidewalks. So that's not exactly the retaining wall issue. Another thing that came up is I got an email from a landscape architect and architectural historian who was interested in surveying historic retaining walls in the city. This was, as far as I know, a propose to nothing that we've discussed. It's just sort of good fortune that she wrote to me. I don't think we have HPC grant funding available for that this year, but if we were to fund that sort of research project, it could have an end goal that would result in greater protection for historic stone walls. So I guess none of that immediately resolves this question.
Two things. One, if we knew about the right-of-way situation, obviously, then there's more protection for it. But since this does impact more than this one property, I would be in favor of amending this in some way to protect the wall.
Okay. Also, for the record, we haven't decided on the house one way or another. If people vote to nominate it, then I will tell the city council why I believe it meets the criteria for local listing. So that's still something we have to consider this meeting.
Okay. Comments?
Want to go around the table and
Sure,
do
Sam?
a straw poll about
Yeah,
designating this one?
right. All right, let's do that. How do our members feel about nominating this and sending it to the city council at this point? Sam?
I don't think, I mean, given what we just went through, I don't think we've got any pull there right now.
Right. Ashley?
I would agree.
Okay. Jeremy?
Not individually, I mean, have we ever considered doing a larger
We're
area?
looking at doing that, but that's a whole different.
Yeah, I
process.
know, but that's, would be something I'd be more supportive of than the
Yeah.
individual one.
Bill?
I would agree with what he said. I think one additional comment I might have, it seems like it might be appropriate, because the owner of this property really didn't come to a conclusion, is this gonna be partial demolition or full demolition? And it seems like we would have the ability to go back and ask that question, as well as asking the question related to the sidewalk and the retaining wall. My guess is he wants to get his demolition, and he would probably, if we're mostly concerned about the retaining wall and the sidewalk, he would probably be willing to compromise on that. But I think there's enough ambiguity. It would be much easier for us to make a decision if we had the good facts on it.
And I completely agree with that. I think we need to get that detail at the beginning.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Bill. Elizabeth?
They've already said it.
All right.
Although I agree with what Bill said, that was going to be one of my points, so thank you for that one. But I know I've been here a very short time compared to a number of other people on the commission, but I understand what happened with Cascades and everything with city council, but too many times we keep seeing these neighborhoods pulled apart, just that buildings get picked off, and then by the time that it seems like we can get organized enough or get someone interested, half the neighborhood's been torn down in quote progress. And it's just time and again, and the reason people, old timer, Bloomington families either stay here, or the Bloomerang effect, or people like me that come here, is because there are unique individual neighborhoods and they do have these unique parts to them. And yes, this is just one building and it's part of a larger neighborhood, but pull that one off and that's pulling the thread on the sweater. And we don't know where that's going to end. And I know from legal, we're not allowed to ask what they're going to do with it and this and that and the other, so I understand. But I highly doubt they're going to try to do with the gentleman whose name I forgot, is they're going to do anything like this to try to keep it anywhere near that. And again, I realize what we're going against with city council, but I'd rather pick that hill and stand on it and go down with it than watch another neighborhood just get replaced with anywhere town across the world. Anywhere you travel in the world, the exact same buildings are everywhere. And we have a unique place that we have an opportunity to put our foot down and say, hey, let's keep this. So that's just my 2 cents. If I need to stand alone on that, I will. But that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, that's interesting. I'll back you on that.
Okay.
And maybe this is a chance if we all do show up at the council meeting when it's considered and make comments, and maybe it'll be easier for them to understand a house as historic rather than a park, or especially there were kind of political considerations in that instance. Maybe it's a good, maybe it would work, I don't know. It's a good chance to try to improve things.
Okay. Ernesto?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with your points. I agree with your points. I would be for presenting the case in front of the council too. I think, these cases over and over, they come through this body here, and it's like it just becomes one more process to do, and nothing ever happens.
Okay.
The question I have perhaps is, let's say that we get denied. What happens? Does it come back again here, or is just that's it? We lose the battle completely, right? We cannot protect anything.
I don't think so.
Right, because
the sidewalk, no.
the protection power we have from the demo delay is nominating it as a district to the council.
Yeah.
So, if we miss our shot at the council, then that's it.
So is it worth to regroup and make our case where we include sidewalks, walls, everything, and then present in front of the city council?
Is your question, don't take this one
No,
forward
take
and
it,
regroup?
or take it forward and include the walls, sidewalks.
Include everything.
And especially for the
Comments, we could find it out, so people are stressing
Yeah.
different things.
And I was looking at the packet, I think it was from January, the January 25th packet. It did mention, I should just probably already know, but it did mention, do you have that packet?
I do.
It said, the site consists of the main house, a detached garage, and an ashlar limestone retaining wall. The sidewalk in front of the property is covered in the WPA limestone square and octagon pattern.
Do also have copies of the draft ordinance I wrote that includes the limestone retaining wall and the sidewalk.
So
That's also comes up in the staff report as well.
Did I understand correctly that you asked, the reason that the entire neighborhood or area didn't move forward with the designation is because the neighborhood wasn't for this? Did you hear that?
Before my time.
So there's not it's not a neighborhood, it's not designated, doesn't fall under it at this point. We have talked about establishing it, but in order to save the house under that part of the guideline, we can't do it now.
Okay, so just because you weren't approaching the neighborhood due to this specific property, it was in the past.
There have been people in the neighborhood and around town who have been interested in a Cottage Grove Historic District for a long time now. But as far as I know, there hasn't been enough of a movement of people to, get a vote from property owners in the neighborhood and draft guidelines for the district.
So part of that problem with that neighborhood is that it's all rentals.
Yeah.
There are very few there are owner-occupied places. like up on Washington Street, between 10th and Cottage Grove, you got Dave Ferguson living there. And he would be, I'm sure that they would be more for preservation, but then you have a whole lot of property owners that wouldn't be for that because it affects their property. Although we got that done with
Well, something worth mentioning.
I think Hannah wanted to pipe in.
I just want to mention that initially when back in February when this was going on, I did speak with Nancy Houston, and she had indicated that they had attempted in the past, when she was here, to nominate that district, and it did not move forward. So I just want to make sure that that is clear, that at some point in the history, they did attempt a designation, it did not move forward. It somehow ended up on a survey though, is that correct? Michelle?
Right, that's what the study area is, determining sort of where that would lie and therefore which property owners are voting on the decision.
When you say it didn't move forward, in what step of the process did it not move forward? Was it?
They were unable to get it nominated in some fashion. I'm not exactly sure the course of events, but
Yeah, like, I didn't know if it got to the city council or did the
No,
commission
no,
vote
at
or?
the neighborhood level.
So,
Okay.
But
what
that
the,
happens.
right.
Many times, I mean, my own neighborhood is now historic, but went through, I mean, it was a multi-year process. It was, nobody wanted it at one point, and then a little, people gradually start coming around. Maybe there's more property owners, living homeowners.
So yeah, part of what the voting process would look like is each property owner gets one vote regardless of how many properties they own. And then for the, in order to get the nomination to the HPC, they have to not have a majority of those property owners object. So now I'm not sure if the last attempt got that far and they had a majority of property owners reject, or if they simply didn't think that they would get the support they needed and tabled the idea. But that's really what it would look like. So if a lot of these properties are owned by the same handful of individuals, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's less likely to succeed.
So, our question right now is, do we go ahead and have Noah write the report and we move forward to send it to city council?
I have a comment.
Yes, Chris?
Yeah. Going forward with this as weak as it is just not a good strategy. The stronger strategy is going over the whole district, making an effort. And what I've seen in preservationists have seen over the years is sometimes a loss will bring the question to the front. Whatever, they could build an atrocious 3-story, awful structure here that could galvanize people and make them recognize the neighborhood. It also could go to the council where the whole discussion of density and the relevance of historic preservation would be debated. So strategically, I wouldn't do the single property, and I've backpedaled on this since before, but I have come to feel that would be a big mistake.
Something that I think came up before, and this isn't really a consideration for myself or anyone here necessarily, is that the existing house has, I believe, the maximum number of renters. It doesn't have the maximum number of rental units, but there's currently 5 people living there, and that area is zoned for 5 unrelated individuals per structure. So I sort of struggle to see, what a new building would look besides something that's slightly larger to include a couple of extra bedrooms.
5 unrelated per dwelling unit.
Per dwelling.
So if they built something with, say, 5 dwelling units, you could have 25 people.
Okay. Is it zoned for multifamily?
Let me double check that. I think it is.
I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Yes.
If I can add just one more
Absolutely.
comment. As I'm sitting and listening to everyone, I
Yeah.
appreciate everything everyone's saying. And I agree, being a new member, one of the first things I did was read through all the documentation on what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And it's pretty concise. What I've observed is a little bit of a disconnect. As you have different people that come onto the committee, off the committee, onto the city council, off of the city council. And I think, Margie, you had mentioned a work group, work session with them. I kind of agree with the gentleman back here that this is probably not the right place to take a stand. I think it is the right place to go back to this gentleman who's not quite sure what he wants to do with the property and ask some questions, and then make a good decision. But I think for our group going forward, if we had that work session, focusing on the documentation that's out there that we're supposed to work within the boundaries of, and bring our expertise to the table with the city council and say, okay, here's what it says, and here's what it really says and what it really means based on our expectation. What is your vision for the city? And what is your vision related to this documentation? And that does several different things for us. It helps us to build a good working relationship with the council under a common understanding. And so then at that point, once we have a good understanding based on what's already written, the expertise that we can share, and then what their knowledge is and their vision is, then we can come back and we can say, okay, I think now we're all walking in the same step, so that when we do bring something back to them, we're going to say, okay, here's our explanation of why this needs to happen the way it needs to happen, but also this is in alignment with that work session that we had together. And I think that's much more powerful. And that's where we can actually start looking at a neighborhood rather than an individual property.
Yeah, just one off.
And as part of that work session, it would be great if we could maybe initiate some kind of task force or subcommittee to look and see where we need to be proactive, and perhaps we get a public input as to whether or not that would be well received by the public, and if it's worth moving forward, worth the time and effort.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. 100%. That needs to be done.
Okay. Noah, we'll move forward with those suggestions. All right.
So we still need to vote on this.
Right. I'm sorry, didn't hear you.
Still need to vote on this.
Yeah, we still need to decide. We got good direction going forward. We need to make a decision which way.
One clarifying question that might help that is, where is this on the clock? Since we've been waffling back and forth
It's
on.
under interim protection until some council acts or.
Until we do something.
Or we
Until we
vote
do
to
something.
release it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So what's the will of our membership?
So do we need to go back and check with the owner on what kind of demo? I mean, since he doesn't seem like
Yeah,
he
I think
had a
Bill had
plan
good idea, and I think
with that. I mean, 'cause that was
since
a
we're
great
under
point
interim
that-
protection, no, you can go back
I
and
can
get
contact.
clarification.
Mhm.
And then at our next meeting, we can
Then we
move
know what we're
forward.
actually voting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks,
And
Jerry.
stress our concern around the
Yeah,
sidewalk.
right.
and the retaining
Yeah,
wall.
exactly, sidewalk and the retaining walls.
So then do we go around and vote whether or not we want to forward this to common council just to clear that up?
Right. I think we would do it at the next meeting,
Can you
Sam.
table it for
Table
now?
it.
We'll just table
Vote
it,
to table
yeah.
it.
If that's
About the
acceptable.
workshop, to understand. process better.
We need to get that set up.
We need a work session?
Yeah. we
I
will.
have sent Stephen Lucas, who's the council attorney, I sent him an email. I just pulled it up again and he hadn't responded, so I just sent him another email and said, hey, this just came up again tonight, what do you think? And I offered that Noah and I, sorry Noah, I just already offered that you and I would work, could
Mhm.
offer like to start an agenda, what it might look like.
Yeah.
That's okay.
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 So let's, we'll table, yes, I'm sorry.
Chris, Chris, yeah. I think it's a good idea to have him come back one more time. And you can ask him what he's doing exactly, and would he be amenable to the sidewalk wall? I mean, that could be done in person.
I mean, we've been dealing with this since October, and he's been dealing with us since October, and he's coming an hour both ways. And I don't necessarily think that we need to drag them back down.
We just asked the question.
Yeah, if we can get the question answered, then I don't.
So if I were to get hear back from him clarification on what his plans are for the site and how that would impact the sidewalk and the wall, do you feel like that? This might be a lot to ask, but do you feel like
That question, or can be just what he's wanting to demolish? We can't ask him
Right.
what he wants to do with the
Right. Right.
So we can just say, what are you clarifying? What are you wanting to demolish? Yeah.
He could be on Zoom though, right?
Yeah.
Is the petition?
it's not
Yeah, but you
supposed
could
to
just
be a fact that we would-
answer an email.
We're supposed to be looking at
Right.
just-
Yeah, we just need to know the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, we just need.
I don't
Yeah.
think he will come.
Yeah, an email
Right.
response would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if you join us on
It's
Zoom.
more than, I don't.
Yeah.
More than Ruby.
Or-
Attend.
Could we
Mhm.
not,
Has he been friendly?
could we not make a motion that, says that we're not sending this to the council, subject to confirmation they're not impacting the wall?
Not at this
No?
meeting, I don't think, Ashley. I think we'll postpone it to the next one, so we get more clarification what the owner wants to do with the property, whether it's a partial or it's a full, you know, how it's gonna treat the wall, the sidewalk. I think that's all critical stuff, and I think that can be accomplished in 2 weeks. I mean, our next meeting is then this month. And if you could join us Zoom, come in person, or answer the questions that we'll have them, I think we'll be good. And move it on to our next meeting.
Okay.
So, if that's, is that acceptable with everybody? Everybody good with that? All right, very good.
Motion to table till the next meeting?
Second? Roll call.
Sam made the motion and John seconded.
Yeah, or Ernesto.
Okay.
He's here.
Oh, it was Ernesto?
Yes.
Either
Oh,
one
I
of us.
apologize.
That's all right.
Okay. Ernesto Castaneda,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Ashley Johnson,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
William Falk.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Terrific. All right. All right, let's move on to 605 South Fest.
Okay, so it goes on.
And we have
South
we do have our attorney and the owner with us this evening.
That's correct.
Okay, very good.
Okay. So this is a refresher. I put together a timeline. I don't believe this is entirely complete. This is based on the documentation that I have saved and that has been sent to me from other people with the city. But I believe everything in here is correct. So March 22nd, 2018, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed a demolition delay for 605 South Fest that was relating to the installation of a new roof. The installation of a rubber roof was approved, but the request to install a new metal parapet roof was denied. The Historic Preservation Commission then passed in May 30th of 2018, Ordinance 1808 to designate 605 South Fest as a local historic district, which was then passed by Common Council. At some point in 2020, the owners removed the original Ludovici Spanish vault tiles and installed a metal roof on the parapet. June 23rd, 2020, a notice of violation was written. I don't have documentation whether it was received or not by Weininger Real Estate. On August 21st, 2020, Daniel Dixon, the city attorney at that time, working with the HPC, sent a second notice of violation. November 12th, 2020, the HPC denied a retroactive COA that had been filed by the owners, Weininger Real Estate, requesting that, and then the commission requested that the tiles be replaced in kind. December 9th, 2020, Daniel Dixon sent a letter to the petitioner's attorney, Gregory Lauer, explaining the commission's decision on November 12th. May 26, 2021, Daniel Dixon wrote to Gregory Lauer saying that he agreed to stay on, not stay, a deadline of June 24th, 2021 for the restoration of the roofing while the city worked to hire a new preservation program manager. Sometime later, after the new manager, Gloria Colum, was hired on August 19th, she corresponded with the site's property manager, Jody Key, about finding replacement tiles. On March 4th, 2022, City Attorney Daniel Dixon emailed Gregory Lauer explaining that Gloria had not received subsequent updates, despite having sent a follow-up email to Jody, I believe, a month earlier. Dixon wrote that it appears that the city is going to have to initiate a lawsuit to compel compliance with Title VIII of Municipal Code. On April 28th of 2022, Weinecker Construction Inc. placed an order for Brava brand synthetic replacement tiles. Gloria Colum received the receipt. April 27th. Okay, so the timeline may not be correct with that item exactly, but we received the receipt on April 27th. August 29th, 2023, Gloria Colum wrote another notice of violation. Then March 11th, 2024, City Attorney Margie Rice emailed Gregory Lauer with Weininger Real Estate inquiring about plans to replace the roofing material. March 28th, 2024, the outstanding notice of violation was addressed in old business at a Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Then April 1st of 2024, Margie Rice invited Gregory Lauer and staff of Weininger Real Estate to attend this HBC meeting on April 11th. Is that substantially correct?
And then I did send, just on April 5th, I did send Greg Lauer, an attorney, and I include, the attorney, I included the letter from August 21st of 2020, the December 9th, 2020 letter, as well as a copy of the verified complaint for violations that had been prepared but not filed by Daniel Dixon, just so they would have all the same information that we have.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we need to hear from Mr. Lauer at this point. Do you have anything else at this point, Noah?
Oh, that's all I have for now.
Okay, very good. Mr. Lauer?
I'm Greg Lauer. I represent Weininger Real Estate. Weininger Real Estate is here this evening by owner Tom Weininger and by property manager Jody Key. We're here under the old business designation to try to figure a path forward. I recognize by watching the last meeting that this is a point of frustration for you. It's also a point of frustration for Weininger Real Estate because at the time this occurred with respect to the replacement that did take place, they're trying to address roof leaks that were not able to be corrected by any other means. They had tenants complaining about health issues, black mold, etc. So we had on one hand. On the other hand, we had this committee, and a business decision was made by Weininger Real Estate to try to preserve the health of the current tenants because it was a situation that was not good, and a lot of threats were being made internally by those tenants. That said, it's been off my radar for 2 years. Once Margie contacted me approximately 3 weeks ago, as she can tell you, we've been responsive. We're looking for a path forward. We're looking for some realistic timeframes, and ideally, we're looking for your help in helping us identify a synthetic material that will visually serve to replicate and appear as these clay tiles. We have samples tonight. We have estimates with a synthetic that you will see we're going to cost nearly $30,000 just as a synthetic. We're awaiting estimates from the same local provider, Reese, on clay tile. It's our understanding that that's going to be between 2 and 3 times what we've been quoted for the synthetic material. But we are here to find, hopefully, a mutually agreeable path forward. We're not here, hopefully, to rehash the past. We'd like to work with you to move forward, and that's why we're here tonight.
Good. Thank you, sir. So let's go to questions, and let's start with Ernesto this time.
Yeah. Did you guys have options for actual tiles, not synthetic?
we're awaiting that. We did make that request. Reese locally does not get a lot of requests for clay tile. There's not a lot of clay tile in this area of the US. So they are putting that together, and we do not have it yet, but we expect to have it in a reasonable period of time. I don't know what that will be. Tom, do you have an idea?
Next couple weeks, probably.
Okay, I would be interested to see what options are out there.
You wanna pass around that synthetic, sample?
No, in our timeline, when they first came to us, and I may be wrong, Sam, you might, yeah, so when they first came, didn't they want to tear the roof off and put a gabled roof on?
Yeah.
And then, was the tile already taken off at that point?
No.
Okay, so we had denied the gabled roof at the time that you wanted to install. And then eventually you guys came around to doing a rubber roof on it? At this point, that's what's been put on?
The
to
rubber
protect-
roof is on the flat part, non-visible part of the
Right.
roof, which has been approved by way of a retroactive.
Right, that was in the retroactive
That
COA.
was in it. So, but in the process, did you have to remove all those tiles?
The tiles were not structurally sound anymore, so the tiles that were removed, they broke up. They were over 100 years old, so they were not salvageable.
Understandable. Okay, thank you. So do we have questions, Sam?
The only question I had, were you here for the earlier part of the meeting with the petitioner who had the French interlocking tile?
No.
Okay. It'll be in the minutes. That's my only question.
Ashley, questions?
Not this time.
Jeremy?
No.
Bill? Any questions? Elizabeth, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Daniel?
I'm not from the rehash.
Okay.
I think I covered.
Very good. Any?
No.
Thank you, Karen. So let's move on to comments. at
I
this
do have a
point.
question, if
please
that's
do.
fine.
Yeah.
So Gloria received a receipt for an order of synthetic tiles. Is that something that Weininger River received?
No, we didn't get that.
Oh, okay.
Could you say that?
So the cement tiles have already been ordered.
I
Is that
actually
correct?
correct. I think they were ordered. But
They
I think
ordered them, but we took them back.
Yeah,
Yes, now that's coming into question, whether it's clay or synthetic.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to comments at this point. Sam, you got comments?
Yeah, I think this has been, as everyone's aware, we're pretty frustrated with this. And the whole reason this building was designated was to preserve the original material on the roof. And in the more restrictive districts, and actually in a lot of districts, we tend to approve replacement of materials in kind. And I think part of the discussions we've had with Elm Heights especially is that how much of a hardship is it in kind? Now, if there's been some good faith effort to find stuff and to deal with it, I think I found the commission a lot more sympathetic. In this case, I'm personally am not that sympathetic, and I'm not interested so much in synthetic materials. The albedo is a lot different. It's just not gonna look the same. It's a 100-year roof, regardless of whether you put synthetic material on it or if you put clay on it. And everyone would like to see clay. There's a manufacturer in Ohio that makes that stuff. So that's the reason I was asking earlier if you had been here for the earlier part of the presentation. That's all I got.
Thank you. Ashley?
No comment.
No comments. Jeremy? Bill?
Yeah, I think just what I would share, I think the minutes from, I think Sam, you mentioned that reading the minutes would be valuable because we had a case just before this where the product just merely wasn't available. It didn't exist any longer. And so there was an alternative that was allowed by the committee. In this situation, clay tiles are readily available. And when you're in a historic district, if it's readily available, that's what you do. So I think that's, at least that would be my position.
Daniel?
Mine have been covered, so.
Karen?
Nothing to add.
Vanessa?
Yeah,
anything?
same. I would be in favor to see this in clay tiles and not synthetic.
I would agree with my fellow commissioners that at this point, I think we want to see clay tile be replaced in kind, like what was taken off. My personal take on this, the synthetic never looks real. It's fake. And that building's over 100 years old. It needs to be put back the way it was. We notice in the pictures between 2015 and now, one of the other roofs, shed roofs that covers the entrance, that the clay tile was totally taken off and a new roof was put on with just asphalt shingles. So it's quite apparent that, I'm sorry, Mr. Weiniger, that you're not interested in maintaining this property as it was, and that was what brought about the designation of it. And so we would like to see you come back with the clay tiles and we can move forward from there.
Can I clarify, is the company that you're talking about, and I just looked it up, it is the one in New Lexington, Ohio?
Yeah, it's, I
Yeah.
can't pronounce it. But
I can't either, but it's spelled Ludowicki.
Well, same Ludowicki or.
yeah,
Where-
and I'm not advocating that the petitioner use that one. It's just like,
Right.
that's local-ish, and it was put in front of me. They actually just sent me a book a couple of weeks ago, so they were on my brain.
I found it from the petition earlier.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more comments at this point? I don't hear anything. So we'd like to see you come back with the clear tile and we'll move forward from there.
So to understand correctly, when you say come back with clay tile, you're talking clay tile that you can approve before we move forward? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think so. I think we
Yes.
want to see the clear tile before we move forward with it. So that we are getting what is similar to what was there prior.
Any other questions? You guys got any grant money yet?
Well, I'm sorry, there isn't anything available.
You don't think so? Anywhere?
We had discussed on the phone a couple of tax credit options. The buildings outside of the BUEZ, which is a part of town where grant funding is available for projects like this. So nothing at the city level.
Yeah, we talked about that. Noah, you worked at the state. You didn't know of anything. Did you think of it? That was the tax credit?
Right, the
Yeah.
tax credit, which that would be the federal tax credit in this case. Because it's an income producing property, state grants are just available for nonprofits and local governments, and then state tax credits are for private residences.
And just to clarify, I think, Margie, you had asked that, you were present for the meeting, and it should be in the minutes that I think that was my first meeting, where the committee asked themselves that same question, if there was any money that was available. And I think, Noah, that was your first meeting as well, when you said that you went through every single item and said that there wasn't.
Now, having said that, I mean, and I have zero control over the city budget, let me tell you that. But certainly this committee could recommend to Anna as she prepares her budget, like, we'd like you to ask the city council or ask the mayor if the mayor would put aside some general fund money. General fund money can be used,
Well, I thought we had some general fund money for HPC.
for grant, like if you wanted to
Oh,
have
for
grant,
grants,
like
right.
if you
This is for-
wanted, if you wanted to develop. And I don't know if you know if the HBC's ever done this, but certainly it would be legal if the HBC said locally, I wanna have a grant program, just sort of subsidize some of these repairs, encourage, incentivize some of these things. You could come up with a program if you wanna do that, and you could ask, for a request, the mayor would have to take that request forward to the council and get approval. But if you wanna get serious about some of the, and that may be also something you talk about with the, council in the work session. Like, would they support something like that? Would they put some of the money, in it to encourage historic preservation? That you could do. That doesn't exist right now, but I think that that's, if you wanna encourage compliance with the code and encourage people who, if it's, 3 times as much to repair the roof, that can be cost prohibitive for some people. And I know one of the things that we talked about, Greg, on the phone was that this is not like it's not like making loads of cash. This property is not cash flowing, such that you're having a lot of extra income coming off of this property to support this kind of a repair. Is that right?
That is correct. This is a break-even rental property for Winegar Real Estate.
And you had at one point, is that not correct, that you had at one point thought about putting this on the market?
That is correct.
Yeah. How many units are in this particular space?
15.
15, and they're all single rooms, or there's some of them are pretty big?
Two bedrooms and the rest are single.
Okay, 2 bedrooms.
But yeah, it's not gonna cover $90,000 but it's really
Ashley, did you have a question?
Yeah, just for clarification, the clay tiles that the commission's looking at is only on the overhang, correct?
Right.
It's not to
a
replace the
full
flat
roof.
rubber roof. Okay, just bare it. All right.
All right.
May I ask one more question? Had it ever actually gone on the market, or you just were considering? It did go on the
It did
market?
go on the market.
And no interest in purchasing?
No, we had some people come through, yeah, we just didn't make a deal.
Okay.
And you do not have an accurate, updated quote for the clay tiles yet?
Not yet, but
Yeah, okay.
we've asked.
But
We're
you're
waiting.
anticipating that it's around $90,000?
That's Reese telling us their opinion that it's gonna be 2 or 3 times what they've quoted for the synthetic, which covers material and labor. So once they are able to put that together, then we'll have a better idea of the exact cost. I wish we would have had it tonight, but it doesn't sound like it would have changed much in the way of this committee's, preferences.
And you can share any of that information, I mean, certainly Noah and I can see what we can find out too in terms of sources and materials. If you wanna share like the number of tiles or the dimensions or whatever that you submitted in order to get your quote.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you. All right. I'm worn out.
And I believe we're done on time.
No, we're 5 minutes late.
Okay. Any commissioner comments in this meeting?
I do really like the idea of a joint or a work session and, talking about how do you get neighborhoods designated?
Yeah.
Especially in neighborhoods where there are very few owner occupants, because I hear again and again commissioners who are like, oh, why do we have to do this again? And I share the frustration, but I think there's additional work that has to be done if we're serious about maintaining the kind of building stock in Bloomington that we want to see.
And
So
this would be an internal work session You're thinking, okay.
Yeah, I mean, just with not only with the HPC, but so I think there's two different things, right?
Yeah.
There's the HPC session with the city council to talk about what are your goals, what would you support, then coming back from that saying, okay, and what are ours and how do they align with, because
I think that's wise.
we don't get paid too much to come here. So it's we got to pay the rent somehow. So picking the low hanging fruit and how do you target what you want? Okay,
Very true, thank
I'll
you,
shut up,
Sam.
yeah, thanks.
No,
I agree
comments
with
are awesome.
Sam on that. I like that
Yeah.
idea. Brought that up, and also with grant money to help people, if that could be done. Also, and this is something I remember from the past, why would people want to have their neighborhood designated? Is it always punitive? What are the perks? Even if it is trash collection or something. So I think we got to discuss that too, because eventually there are other neighborhoods that are coming up to be designated. So what are you going to entice people? How are you going to entice them to say, hey, this is a good thing?
I think part of
Because
the
right now it's
enticement
not.
for preservation and designating historic neighborhoods is that your property values maintain and actually rise over a period of time. So really, historic preservation is very good for the neighborhoods over a long period of time. It may not be short period, but as I've seen, and I've been in real estate now 38 years, I can tell you that I bought a house over on West 6th Street with a vacant lot for $20,000 back in 1986. That same lot and house today is more like 250. So over a period of time, preservation has really helped these neighborhoods out and will continue to do so. That's my take on preservation. It also makes our community, it makes our community a stronger community.
I mean, you have an
property.
So
All
I,
very
you do have an appraiser on. the
Oh, yeah,
commission.
that's right. Well, I'm
Maybe
sorry,
she should
Ashley.
step-
Not trying to step on your
I don't
toes.
know that that's always the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, it really is location and property dependent.
Yeah.
But certainly could prepare something that would address the question.
Well, some of it's messaging, marketing. It is.
I think you were more speaking of some incentives. We'll
Yeah.
help you with the facade. We'll
Yeah.
help you with repairs. I think
Yeah.
that's probably more along the lines of what you were. Something to entice people.
Well, at one time ago, we did have monies available, I don't know if it was for preservation or from hand, but they did have a rehab program for the older homes. Is that still out there?
We have a rehab program, but it's not specific to older homes, and
Okay.
it has to do with income eligibility. So
Okay.
an income producing property would not.
Would
be
not
eligible.
qualify, but owner occupied under certain.
Unless we could look at it from a different lens and saying that that particular property is being rented to certain AMIs. So if they're affordable units, it could potentially qualify for some things.
Okay.
And we talked, Greg Lauer and Noah and I talked in our conversation about, just given the mayor's interest in affordable housing, whether that, would be a property that could be acquired for affordable housing, since they don't seem to be, or could be turned into affordable housing. I don't know whether it could be.
I did say,
Population being so heavily tenant based, we've got to find a way to include tenant housing in whatever we decide, I feel like, and relook at what we can offer.
Yeah.
If we actually want to make a
think
difference.
about, do you marry historic preservation with some of the affordability and housing needs?
Let me just throw this out there, and sorry if it's gonna come from the wrong place, but, if you guys are requiring a $90,000 repair on the house or on the building, then he can't just leave rents low. He's gonna have to adjust the rents up. So that does not equal affordable housing.
That's true.
Yeah.
However, we also designated him to stop him from doing the roof in the first place. And even though he says that there's no other way we could do this, that is not entirely the case.
right, and the tile was not gone when they came to us to start with. I mean, when you want to do that
They knew
gabled
what we
roof.
wanted
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
get-go,
yeah.
since 2018.
Yeah.
They knew what we wanted.
Well, but to Anna's point, generally speaking, if the cost to maintain or repair is higher,
Yeah.
that doesn't really correlate with lower rent.
That's
No,
fair.
it
Increases
doesn't.
rent, so
Doesn't.
just
But
generally
on the other
speaking.
hand, well, I'm sorry. That's a location that can command higher rents. Right.
We've got a lot of locations
There's-
with high rents right now.
Yeah.
I mean, but it could command higher at that location.
But that's not what necessarily,
But that's not ours.
but I hear what you're saying, and I think that if we can throw money at projects like this, provided that it's reflected in stabilizing or lowering the rent, yeah.
I just think it's fair to say that historic preservation and affordable housing may not really diverge in past, but if we can find a way to facilitate that, I think it would be in everyone's best interest.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
I think
agree.
if there is gonna be a city funding program in order to justify it, we are gonna have to bring up rental properties and keeping them affordable, so.
And just
Mhm.
one other comment on a income producing property, because I believe this gentleman has owned this piece of property for several years.
Mhm.
So his acquisition price was down here. The estimate of value today is up here. So typically what occurs is and you would speak to this as well, is they will push the rent up. And the value of that property is based on the cash flows that get generated off of that. And as soon as the cash flows get high enough, they will then go and refinance and pull a significant amount of capital out of that property. And that will be a continual cycle until it caps out. And so those properties will almost always barely cash flow if the developer's doing what they should be doing, which is maximizing the value of it and pushing it up and pushing it up. So the cash flow argument doesn't necessarily resonate with me because of the long-term ownership in this piece of property.
They've had it since before 2018, but we can figure
And
that
this
out.
could all be easily verified by looking at, because it's all recorded information, you know, what the acquisition price was, what the next mortgage was, what the next mortgage was, to see the amount of capital that's been pulled out of it.
Yeah, you can see, and I don't, that's really good information. We probably
Mm.
should check with the assessor and the recorder and see what we can find. I know that this Weiniger owns other properties, and what they told me was that the other properties are subsidizing this one. So, I don't know,
So even with this.
How is that relevant to
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
specific
Yeah.
laws here? I don't really, that's really, it's either
Right.
preservation or not. That's our lane, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and also as of, I think it was January 1st, multifamily properties just got a huge tax break, I believe. Are you familiar with that? The tax assessor used to have to assess it a certain way. And now I think it was January 1st of this year, when the state of Indiana changed that to where it can now be taxed based off of original acquisition price, which is a huge benefit. Huge benefit compared to actual market value.
I'd have to look at that because Indiana, as far as I'm aware, is based
I
on
know,
market value assessment
well,
system. So that would
and
be a
I'm-
major change.
I haven't talked to anyone about it, but before the meeting, I went in and looked it up.
Mhm.
And this popped up, and I was like, can that be true? Because that seems like too good of a deal. I'd love to have that on my house.
yeah. It's Fagry Dranker
Mhm.
is a law firm that has, new Indiana statute opens door to lower property tax assessments for apartments in 2024. And it's Indiana Code 6-1.1-4-39. So I haven't read it, but yeah, I think that's what you're talking about.
I'll have to read that.
Okay, any comments on other agenda items? No?
All right,
Okay.
who's left? So let's call it adjournment.